When embarking on the study of a Bible passage, one might begin with the context of the book in which the passage occurs, in this case, Matthew, and additionally, perhaps a consultation with a concordance to see what else the Bible has to say on this theme, which is agony. But instead, I've been asked to share a personal touch point with this passage. In Matthew 26, 36 through 46, we see a scene from the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus anticipating the agony of the crucifixion he must soon endure and asking his disciples to pray and stay up with him the night before. This past week, I examined with my high school Latin students the artistic ancestor of many of the scenes of Christ on the cross. It's a copy of a Greek original, and it's housed at the Vatican Museum. This statue depicts a priest of Apollo in the throes of fighting some very venomous snakes as they viciously attack his own two sons. The scene appears in several literary accounts, a story from the Trojan War. The figure in the statue, the central figure, a priest of Apollo, expresses the clear and raw agony of a parent unable to save his children from a horrible, gut-wrenching death. In this depiction of agony, the brow of the central character bulges in a way that Charles Darwin felt was completely unnatural as he lifts up his cries to the heavens. Artists for centuries have copied this Greek statue, the agony expressed in his very human body, to depict the agony of Jesus Christ dying on the cross. I cannot imagine sitting in the Garden of Gethsemane anticipating this agony. In verse 41, Jesus admonishes his followers, "Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." He's telling his disciples not to fall asleep, not to be weak. Is he also talking about himself? Is he anticipating the weakness of his own flesh at the precipice of unspeakable agony? Is he on the path to the acceptance of his own fate? In the Congregational Church on Long Island, where I grew up, I remember a stained glass window depicting this passage. The sanctuary itself was crafted from dark wood, maybe walnut, much how I imagine the old Bridgeport church to have looked. That church building in my hometown was old, and at some point in its history it was remodeled to reorient the sanctuary from basilica style, like ours, to amphitheater style, in a broader, wider way. When this was done, stained glass windows, including the one depicting this passage, were added. My father says that many of the themes on these windows were classics, scenes he has seen many times in churches of different denominations during his 82 years. In fact, he told me that he remembers seeing this same window depicted in a church in his own hometown, the Lutheran church where my great-aunt Helen played the organ. This stained glass window depicting the Garden of Gethsemane, which I stared at every single Sunday, was a semicircle right above the minister's head. It was a scene of a kneeling Jesus. He is light-skinned, light-haired, calm, and in the background, a few small gray shadows. I hate to say it, almost like worms, lying in the darkness, whom I later discovered to be the sleeping disciples, in the act of neglecting their post of watchfulness behind the back of their leader and teacher, Jesus Christ. In the stained glass window, the thematic presentation of light and dark was very clear. Jesus was the right way. The disciples were in the wrong part of the garden, not watchful and fast asleep. As a child, I, who was eager to discern and understand my world, eager to please and to do the right thing, I saw this light and dark as the difference between right and wrong. The message was that I needed to stay awake, to stay vigilant, to keep watch, and be careful. According to the message on the window, I knew that I needed to choose the right path and not the wrong one. This would bring me success and happiness. So when my 57-year-old self reads this passage with all of the many twists and turns that reality takes during a life, I wonder if, in this moment, Jesus himself is not just struggling with giving directions for his unruly student followers who are falling asleep instead of staying vigilant and praying with him and for him, but instead establishing a sort of blueprint for his own eventual acceptance of his fate in the next few days. Jesus seems to be on the very human path of moving toward peace with what is in front of him from Passover on, as he says in verse 41, "The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And perhaps even more so, for me, and hopefully for all of us, the message reaches out over 2,000 years later to remind me, and maybe remind us all, to stay vigilant and keep on the path which God has selected for all of us, to pay attention and to be awake. Jesus simply says to us, "Sleepers, awake."